first thank everyone that has been watching from the beginning of the day, but also those that joined us right now for a session on marketing your games. As you know, a famous saying by Bill Gates, if I was down to my last dollar, I would spend it on PR. So if you are down to your last dollar, this is the right session for you to know where you have to spend it. We have very amazing speakers for you today. We have, as Samar said, we have Anya, we have Haley, and we have Muhammad. We're gonna hear from them in a bit and about their backgrounds and experiences. But first, I wanted to shake things up and start things for the speakers and the audience together with a quick this or that game about gaming, since we are in a gaming session after all. So first questions, you can all unmute your mics and we can I'll address you for you to answer, but also for our audience that is watching at home, you can also answer through the comments. So first things first, the biggest question, Xbox or PlayStation? I know there's always Team Xbox, Team PlayStation. Anya, we can start with you. Which you prefer?
PlayStation.
What about you, Haley? PlayStation with such conviction. Haley?
I'm an Xbox girl myself.
I guess because we're gonna find out in a bit why. And Muhammad?
So I've only played on Xbox, so my vote naturally goes for Xbox.
Okay, I'm more of a PlayStation girl myself, but would love to try an Xbox. All right, quick next question. Mobile or PC gaming? Prefer to play on mobile or prefer to play on PC? What about you, Anya?
PC.
PC girl here. And Haley?
I would say I prefer PC, but right now it's more mobile. I'm playing more mobile games right now.
Yeah, for sure. Muhammad?
PC, always.
Okay. How about people in the audience? I'm seeing more PC as well. And next, Twitch influencers or YouTube influencers, whether for you to watch or whether for marketing. Anya?
Oh, neither.
Neither. Okay, we're gonna hear from you soon why. And what about you, Haley?
From a marketing perspective, I'd say probably YouTube.
Okay, what about you, Muhammad?
I agree with Haley.
YouTube as well. Okay, so you're not seeing that Twitch will have much of a future. All right, how about Instagram or TikTok? What about you, Anya?
For influencers or?
Influencers or watching game content, discovery. So when it comes to content, let's say marketing.
Yeah. I'd have to go with TikTok. Yeah.
TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go with TikTok.
What about you, Haley?
Yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, like from an influencer perspective, I'd go with TikTok as well.
Okay. So 2 votes TikTok. What about you, Muhammad?
I think it's sort of a trick question, isn't it? So I think I'd go for both.
Okay, but if you had to choose one, Instagram or TikTok, maybe the audience can help us. Instagram or TikTok, which one do you think is hands-on for content, especially gaming content? TikTok. Okay, so we do think that TikTok is going to continue and it's going to be leading the way for marketing, let's say. So which leads us to our first question. Let's address what are some non-traditional methods to get games in front of the target audience. So we talked about YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, or TikTok. Maybe you can have Haley, just a little bit of background about you and what do you think in terms of non-traditional methods for marketing?
Sure. So you kind of alluded to it earlier. My background is actually I worked at Microsoft for 13 years, was part of the original launch team for Xbox back in 2001. I did a short stint at World Gaming Network, which is an esports tournament operating company here in Toronto. But right now I spend my time with an agency called the T1 Agency. And we focus a lot on sponsorships and partnerships. So one of the trends that I'm really enjoying right now, although it's none of the campaigns that I've specifically worked on, is how we're seeing a lot of partnerships between fashion brands and games. So that's something that I really like to see. It's something that we're seeing across games like Fortnite and even mobile games like Animal Crossing, opportunities for brands to create content in games, but actually also take it outside the games, so beyond digital clothing as well. So that's something that I really think is interesting trend that we've seen a lot of in the last couple of months.
Okay, okay. Anya, care to comment on that? You can tell us also a bit about your background and what your company is doing in terms of that.
Yeah, so I am the director of games at Kickstarter. My background, so I've been in games 13, 14 years, something like that. I worked at a website called addictinggames.com. So if you played a Flash game, probably I have a weird knowledge of Flash games. So it's a fun and exciting time. Yeah, I worked at Nickelodeon for a number of years and kind of realized that corporate structure was not for me. I was like, I don't want to have 40 people in like one small subset of a subset of a subset of a team of a subset of a team. I was like, this is nonsense. There's too much red tape, too much bureaucracy. And so I joined Kickstarter in 2016 and I've been there ever since. And so now I'm responsible for the entirety of the games category. So that's video games, tabletop games, VR, mobile, LARPs, whatever. If it's in the games category, I am responsible for it. So my sort of knowledge and background in marketing is much more limited, I think, than anybody else here. I can speak a little bit more to sort of the like grassroots approach more than anything else, since that's sort of what works on Kickstarter, which is partially why I was like, influencers no, only because on Kickstarter at least, there's a common misconception that if you go to like a big Twitch streamer and you get your Kickstarter project in front of a Twitch streamer or YouTuber, whoever the influencer, right? Which is, to be totally honest, I'm sorry if this is offensive to anyone. I think it's just a completely ridiculous term. I don't know if it's because I'm like an elder millennial, but I'm just like, I don't understand what half these kids are doing half the time on the internet. I'm like, I don't know what is this? I don't understand it. But I will say that it doesn't really have much of an impact on Kickstarter projects. And so that sort of like really like grassroots community building from the ground up it's just so much better for things that we see. So I see a lot of interesting marketing things happening where I'm just like, I first of all, as a person, don't understand. Second of all, what does this actually have to do with the game is always sort of my question that I ask when I see a lot of marketing campaigns.
So have you seen some maybe marketing campaigns for Kickstarter projects that were, let's say, non-traditional? If you're saying they're not using influencers, what could they be using to get their Kickstarter campaign out there?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So like everyone's always sort of looking for like the secret sauce, but the truth is like the sort of, for lack of a better term, traditional method of like making a bunch of cool gifts of what the thing is that you're excited about and trying to connect with people on like, I'm excited to make this game and here's why. That excitement is so much more impactful than these like flashy, wild marketing things where you're like, I got, this huge games person to talk about my game or participate in my game. People then sort of that perception comes into, oh, that person is now associated with this game versus the creator, the actual creator of the game, where like, here's a cool gift, I'm excited about it. Yeah.
I get you. So maybe from Mohammed, from your perspective, you're working in advertising, maybe that can play a role in getting the games out there. Is it still really the traditional advertising? Or are there new ways of advertising that is maybe more catchy and captivating?
Well, mostly it is about using the traditional methods, which is, going for the paid advertising campaigns on different media. But I think for starters, I would like to make a very important point here that you need to have a good quality content first if you have to market it, because then if you don't have a quality content, your goals or gains would only be very short term, because you will only be getting the paid installs or downloads of your product. In the longer term, you will not be able to have a fruitful lifetime value of a customer or revenues from that customer. So that is one. The second thing is that you need to have a good creative artwork of your game, because going back to the 4 P's of marketing, the packaging really matters. So if you have some catchy creative artworks, you get it out there and it stands out among other products there. Having said that, I think you should be targeting all of the most effective channel, in my view, is the paid advertising. And it also has some branches these days now. So one is the traditional digital advertising, which is Google, Facebook, and all those social media and everything, because they have a very niche level targeting options available there. And second one is the in-app advertising, which is what Console Ads does. So if you want to market your game, you want to show it to the like-minded audience, right? So if you can either target your audience according to the your product needs, or you can find a like-minded audience. So users of some similar product can be targeted. Both of these can be done through digital marketing, through Console Ads, or any other ad network for that matter. So yeah, I believe that you should go for all of these channels, and I would highly suggest the digital marketing or the digital channels where you can run advertising campaigns are the most effective ones.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned an important part, that it's really about the content, especially if you want to keep your audience for the longer term. You're not planning on just like making this one-off game, make big bucks, like from it, and then just lose everything that you built. So here maybe it begs the questions that, like, how can developers use their current properties, like whatever games they have out there, to advertise whatever upcoming games that they might have, like upcoming DLC games. Maybe Haley would like to hear from you in your experience.
Yeah, I think there's some good examples of publishers doing that. And again, you touched on it a little bit, but some of the paid campaigns are only available to larger publishers. So, a larger publisher can do a lot more, interesting things as far as sponsorships, partnerships, paid media. I think there's some really good ways of doing it efficiently with targeted ads, especially that Mohammed spoke to. I think that's a great example. But as far as like cross-promoting games, I know it's something that Call of Duty does a lot of with their Warzone. Not always super successful or well received by the community per se, but obviously successful as far as promoting some of their upcoming titles, like Vanguard as an example.
Okay. So maybe this is a question to all of you. Do you have maybe an example of a successful game marketing campaign? Because you're talking about targeted ads, and we know it might become very difficult in this landscape to get your even ads out there and grab attention. So is there a game that comes to your mind that really did grab attention with a campaign? What did they use? Maybe Anya, you can tell us a little bit. Do you have something in mind, something that maybe really grew big on Kickstarter or just any other platform?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of projects on Kickstarter specifically that did a really good job of some of the marketing. Last year, there was a game that launched called Sea of Stars. It was a prequel to The Messenger from Sabotage Studio, based in Quebec, I believe. Definitely in Canada. But they sort of use that grassroots approach of like growing that community early. Part of that, again, was definitely because this was a prequel to a game. They sort of had a built-in community, but like I would argue that just because you have a community doesn't mean that just because you have, a large amount of people that kind of know who you are, means that you can just sit on that comfortably. You still have to kind of like make sure that you're engaging with those people, right? And so their sort of challenge was to continue to grow and to continue that momentum before they launched their Kickstarter project. And so again, they did a lot of ads. They did a lot of targeted ads on Twitter and Facebook and places that they knew their sort of community was. They grew their Discord. It was pretty wild to see what they did. And again, a lot of that was really about sort of fan engagement and getting people into what they were doing versus just blasting people with a bunch of ads and saying like, oh, I kind of hope something hits, right? They really were precious and thoughtful about, great, these ads worked, these ads didn't. How do we get people excited about this thing versus just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks?
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. We're talking about advertising and we're saying like there's a lot of, let's say, companies trying to invest in advertising. How do you differentiate, let's say, your client, your customer, a particular game from just a traditional advertising perspective? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about analytics. I know you come from an analytical background into understanding your audience. So have you seen a campaign that really takes advantage of, let's say, new ways of advertising, but also analytics in advertising?
Yeah, I mean, you need to study your competitors or what the trends that you're talking about means. For example, I have a very good example to quote here. We also, or most of you might have seen the season of the Squid Games recently. And it took the world by storm. Even a cryptocurrency was launched by the name of Squid Games. So
Yeah.
if you see the Play Store even right now, you might have noticed a lot of games going by the name of Squid Games, or they have some skimmings and everything. So it's only a matter of how you analyze what the current trends are and how you can leverage those trends to use in your game. So it's effectively only reskinning your game. It's all about localization. Maybe there's a local event in Australia or India that you want to make use of. So you maybe reskin your game, make it according to the localities, and then maybe promote it as per that. So the analytical part is very important. I believe if you study what's happening around the globe and what your competitors are doing and what your target audience might be thinking about your product, is very important, and you can only do so by studying the data that you have, which is publicly available. Or if you're making a game or product for your audience, it means, I assume, you know about your audience, right? So you would only analyze that data and use it to effectively promote the game. So I have multiple examples to quote, where we run a great amount of analytics, and then we effectively rolled out and promoted a game. And even to that extent that if you search the name of any other game, our game used to pop up. So imagine the amount of analytics going into that optimization and everything. So that is the stuff that we usually do when we're promoting the games, that you need to analyze and make use of the data that is available to you.
Okay, thank you. We've spoken a bit about online. Maybe Haley, from your experience, I know you were involved in a lot of events and such. Was there something offline that stuck out, like a successful campaign that didn't just use online, but also offline? Or even if you just know online, that's also good. What comes to your mind in terms of success?
Well, honestly, it's probably as a result of the last 2 years that just everything has moved online. So, fresh in my mind are just everything that we've had to move the whole, globally as a result of the pandemic. There's just not been a lot that has happened offline. And so when I think about, and I think that that's a good opportunity that we've seen publishers really move and embrace the online. It really has probably expedited how fast digital downloads are happening for games, especially in Canada and North America. But we're seeing more things too, like, I spoke earlier about the fashion in line and how we're seeing some of that move offline as well, but also things like concerts. We're seeing a lot of partnerships moving digitally in games, like Ariana Grande and Fortnite recently. Last year when the pandemic was just kind of starting, Post Malone did something in game with Pokemon Go. So I'm really liking, again, how publishers have been able to switch pretty quickly to reaching their consumers and their audience with cross promotions in game online. So no, that doesn't really answer your question, and part of it is I think probably just because I've been locked up in my house for the last 12 months.
I think it's the same for most of us. So maybe that makes us wonder, does the old marketing mix still really work, where we're promoting these games? Is it really going to be moving forward a mix of offline and online, or are we going to have to focus more online? So maybe you can give us a short, quick answer on this. Where do you see the marketing mix moving forward? Is it still going to be old school? Are we really changing the way we market games forever?
I think that, when we think about marketing, the 4 Ps are always kind of going to be a part of it. But more important now when we talk about promotion is how things are integrated online. So, integrated campaigns always have to happen. But now we're seeing a lot of user-generated content, content on, platforms like TikTok from publishers themselves, concerts in game, clothing in game, ways that publishers can integrate other non-traditional, not endemic brands into their space. I think that that's something that's really exciting. But I do think that once we get out of this pandemic globally, I really am optimistic that we're going to go back to in-person events. And I think that there's a real hunger for it, that people are really looking forward to getting back to doing things face-to-face. So I think that, you know, of course, online is always going to be a big part of marketing, but I really think that we're going to see a resurgence, or maybe I just hope that we're going to see a resurgence back to in real life, you know, face-to-face events.
We hope so. We hope so too at some point. But let's just admit this: being locked at home is what given us more time to play actually more games. Because for me, it's like I would take out my PlayStation maybe like once every few months, and then when the lockdown happened, I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my evenings? Finished a couple of games during that time. So now people like the audience are really having, let's say, even more exposure than before to digital channels. But we know that it's difficult times with COVID. A lot of people maybe lost jobs, lost, you know, like income and such. Even companies, you know, like they're trying to recover from that. So we know they're having limited time, limited money, limited resources. So let's say in this limitation, but also knowing that people are spending more time online. I'll start with you, Anya. Do we still have like an integrated marketing plan? Does it still make sense to have like these, let's say a gaming developer try to focus on different channels, or should they just really hyper focus on like one or two channels and say like, okay, put their marketing efforts there? Have you mentioned that the Sea of Stars, basically they use different channels, but does that really approach still work? Or if we're on a limited, let's say, resources, what would work?
Yeah, I mean, I think with limited resources, you need to be definitely mindful. I think I struggle with this idea that, I mean, smaller teams definitely have less resources. What we've seen, at least, is like huge corporations, for whatever reason, continue to just have massive amounts of money, right? And I guess it makes sense if, like, you know, if we're buying all these new games from Ubisoft and EA and things like that, you know, because we're in this global pandemic. It's the same thing in the board game industry, right? You know, they're actually just rolling in dough. And so they are definitely co-opting the market a lot more and just sort of like pushing, you know, these smaller indie devs aside. And some of them are even just buying indie studios because they know that these indie studios don't have any money. So it's like, I kind of hate it, but it is what it is. So if you're definitely just focusing on staying indie, which, you know, obviously that's sort of Kickstarter's whole thing is like, stay as indie as you can. I think you do need to be a little bit more precious about where your resources are going. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that you don't need like a $300,000 marketing budget to make a splash, right? Because I think for a while, what was happening, at least in like 2012 or so, there were these companies that were popping up that were like, I can make you go viral, which is not a thing. That is not how virality works, right? Like you as a company don't get to decide what goes viral. The people who consume that content get to decide that. And so buying clicks and buying, you know, views and things like that, that is not a direct equation to like success. All that means is that you spend a bunch of money on buying clicks and like, what are you going to do with it? Probably nothing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work. So that slow build, at least from what we've seen, that is so much more effective. This is also kind of why I said TikTok over Instagram, because now Instagram has integrated the option where like everybody in your story, you can have a link, which is awesome. And I am very curious to kind of see how that changes things, especially on Kickstarter, because traditionally, if you were on, people were using Instagram to sort of use, you know, sort of like promote game content. You couldn't click out of Instagram. And so that was really prohibiting people to go to any sort of Kickstarter project, because it was like, well, I'm just going to click through the stories because everybody's attention span is exactly 3 seconds. So like, how do you capture someone within a 3-second time frame, right?
Yeah.
So I am sort of curious to kind of see what happens there. TikTok is great in the sense of like, you have small amounts of engagement. It's, you know, 1 minute is basically how much time you have. You really only have 5 seconds to grab somebody. There's so much being thrown at us at all times that if you can't capture somebody's attention within 5 seconds, you're already done. That is an impossible task. That is a very, very difficult thing. So TikTok has really sort of captured the market of quicks, like very fast, like, oh, this is interesting, this is fun, this is cool, just like these sort of like jump cut sort of things. So having, again, a GIF where you're just like, cool, this is interesting, this is fun, I'm showing kind of like why my excitement about this game is so important versus a long pitch, which I think is like historically what has happened in the games industry, right? If you're pitching to a publisher, you have to have like, you know, a 30-page deck, and it's just like really time and labor intensive. Having something that's 5 seconds is kind of what's going to be really important moving forward, because again, you are competing with pop-ups and this and this and this and tabs and everything that's going on. So having 5 seconds of a GIF, 5 seconds of something that's just like, this is my game, this is why I'm excited about it. TikTok, Twitter, stuff like that is going to be absolutely imperative moving forward.
So you mentioned all of these very popular, let's say, channels, but I know that you're against like influencers, but let's say, if we want to understand, maybe Mohammed, here you can pop in and give us from your opinion, like how can we utilize like streamers and user-generated content on these channels in order to get exposure to these games? As Anya said, we have like 5 seconds to really capture attention. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah, I absolutely am all in for going for the influencers and streamers and everything, because the good thing about them is that the difference between them and the proper hiring a celebrity brand ambassador or anything is that people usually take them for granted that, okay, this guy must be earning money in order to promote this product. But the difference with the streamers and everything is that people can relate to them. People think of them as more close to themselves. So people have more trust in them. If they are telling about a product, compare that to a celebrity, they would take it for granted. For example, Ronaldo is promoting Pepsi, that is for granted. He gets paid for millions of dollars every year. But if some influencer or a streamer is promoting this, that chances are I have more trust in whatever he's saying. So I am definitely all in for using the help of streamers and influencers to, you know, promote your product.
Okay, thank you. Sounds interesting. So you heard from all of our amazing speakers. I hope that you got some very useful insights here, that basically, if you have not much time, you need to use marketing and PR. Try to focus on 1 or 2 channels. Try to use streamers, but that are really connected to your brand message, not just someone that you throw money at and then hope that something will stick. And try to keep your content like brief and really capture attention. And again, don't trust someone that will just tell you we can make you go viral, because really there's no equation to it. I know some people will try to sell you that equation, but it's more really get into the analytics and try to understand what might work for your audience. So this is it for our channel today. I want to thank you, Anya, Haley, and Mohammed. I want to invite people to connect with you online if they have more questions to you. And yes, thank you all for your attention and your attendance.